Winter of the Ice Wizard by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 4. Take My Sleigh. Jack sat on the frozen ground. Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen sat nearby. They were all too shocked to speak. The night was quiet. Overhead the full moon shined brightly, and a few cold stars twinkled in the clear sky. Finally Annie broke the silence. "I wonder what he did to Merlin and Morgan," she said. "I wonder where you will find his eye," said Teddy. "I wonder how we will carry it around," said Jack. "And I wonder if the wolves are near," said Kathleen. She stood up and looked around, pulling her cloak tightly around her. "Well, does anyone remember the Ice Wizard's rhyme?" said Teddy. "Yes," said Kathleen. She repeated the rhyme perfectly by heart. "Take my sleigh and find your way to the house of the Norns in the curve of the bay. Pay them whatever they tell you to pay, and bring back my eye by break of day." "What are Norns?" asked Jack. "I have read about Norns in Morgan's books," said Teddy. "They are known as the Sisters of Fate. They spend their days weaving great tapestries. Their weaving determines the fate of all who live in the land behind the clouds." "So the Norns have his eye?" said Jack. "That's who he meant by when he said he traded with the fates?" "It would seem so," said Teddy. "He said we should take his sleigh to find them," said Annie. "Where's his sleigh?" "Look," said Kathleen, pointing. "'Tis there." "Oh, wow," said Annie. Not far away, a strange-looking silver sleigh glided silently from behind a snowbank. The sleigh looked like a small sailing ship with shiny runners. No one was steering it, and no horses or reindeer were pulling it. From its mast, a white sail dropped in the still air. As the sleigh slid to a stop, an eerie howl shattered the calm of the windless night. "Wolves!" cried Teddy. "Let us make haste." Kathleen grabbed his arm. "Do not run," she said. "If we run, they will chase us." "Yes, of course," said Teddy. "They must not see that we are afraid." Another howl shattered the air. "Run!" cried Teddy. They all charged across the snow to the sleigh and scrambled into it. Jack and Kathleen stood at the front, and Annie and Teddy stood at the back. "There they are!" cried Teddy, pointing. "The white wolves of the night." Jack turned and saw two large white wolves dashing across the plain in the moonlight. As the wolves ran toward the sleigh, their big paws scattered snow around them. "Go, go, go!" Jack cried, clutching the front of the sleigh, but the sleigh didn't move, and the wolves kept coming. "How can we make it go?" cried Jack. "Use the wind string," said Teddy. Jack pulled the knotted string the wizard had given him out of his pocket. "Use it how?" he shouted. "Untie a knot," said Teddy. Jack pulled off his gloves. His fingers were trembling as he tried to untie one of the knots. "This is crazy," he thought. "How can untying a loose knot in a string help us?" But soon he managed to loosen them. A cold breeze began blowing from behind the sleigh. It ruffled the sail overhead. "Untie another," shouted Teddy. "Hurry!" Jack quietly untied a second knot. The breeze grew stronger, and the sail filed out a bit more. The sleigh's shiny runners began sliding across the snow. "Yay!" called Annie. "It works!" "Yes, but not nearly swiftly enough," said Teddy. Jack looked back. The two white wolves had almost caught up with them. They were yelping and running behind the sleigh. Their mouths were open, showing their sharp teeth. Jack quietly untied a third knot. A cold wind blasted the sail. It opened with a snap, and the sleigh shot forward. "Stand fast!" cried Teddy. Jack, Annie, and Kathleen held tightly to the sides of the sleigh to keep from falling out. Teddy grabbed the rudder, and steered them over the snow, away from the ice palace. The wizard's sleigh zoomed across the frozen ground, leaving the white wolves in its wake. Their yelping noises grew fainter and fainter, until they could be heard no more. The wind kept pushing the silver sleigh over ice and snow. The runners made swish, swish sounds as they slid over the moonlit plain. The square sail billowed in the wind like the sail of a Viking ship. With the wolves far behind, the ride was really fun, but cold. "How did you know untying knots would make the wind blow?" Jack asked Teddy. "'Tis an ancient magic." "I have read of wind strings, but had never seen one," said Teddy. "It is a good thing you read so much," said Annie. "Oh, look!" said Kathleen. "Hares and foxes." "Where?" said Annie. "There." Kathleen pointed into the dark distance, "playing in the snow. And listen, whistling swans overhead, behind that cloud." "Wow," said Annie. Jack was amazed by Kathleen's power to see and hear so many things. As before, the moonlit landscape seemed completely empty to him. "Where are you steering us?" Annie asked Teddy. "I have no idea," said Teddy, laughing. "We're supposed to go to the curve of a bay to find the Norns," said Annie. "Then turn left and follow the swans," said Kathleen, pointing across the snowy plain. "They're flying towards the sea." Teddy swerved within the sleigh to the left. For a while they bounced up and down over the snow. Then the ride grew smoother. "We're on sea ice now," said Kathleen. "Seals are beneath. I see their breathing holes. Perhaps we should stop." "Indeed," said Teddy as they whizzed along. "But how?" "Try tying a knot," said Annie. "Excellent idea," said Teddy. "Jack?" Jack yanked off his gloves. With cold, shaky fingers he tied a knot in the string. The wind lessened a bit. The sleigh began to slow down. He tied another. The sail started to droop. "Hooray!" said Annie. Jack tied a third knot, and the wind completely died away. The sleigh glided to a stop. "Well done," said Teddy. "Thanks," said Jack. He tucked the string behind his pocket and looked around. "I wonder if this is where the Norns live." "I will ask," said Kathleen. "Ask who?" thought Jack. Kathleen climbed out of the sleigh. She walked over to the sea ice, studying it closely. Then she stopped above a small hole. Kathleen knelt down and spoke softly in Selkie language. Then she put her ear close to the hole in the ice and listened. A moment later she stood up. "The seal told me the curve of the bay lies just beyond those sea rocks," she said, pointing. "This is where we will find the Norns." "Great," said Annie. Jack, Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen crunched over the frozen sea under the bright moon. They walked through a narrow passage between the sea rocks. When they stepped out from the passage, they stopped. "There 'tis," said Teddy. About 50 yards away was a large, snowy white mound. Smoke was coming from a chimney on top of the mound. Lantern light flickered from a small, round window. "I know you must bargain for the ice wizard's eye alone," said Teddy, "but I would at least like to take a peek at the Norns." He moved quietly to the window and peered into the house. The others joined him. They saw a large fire burning on a hearth. In its rosy glow, 3 strange creatures were weaving at a big loom. Jack caught his breath. Their appearance was shocking. The 3 sisters of fate were as skinny as skeletons. They all had straggly hair, long noses, and huge, bulging eyes. Their crooked, bony fingers fluttered over a large tapestry. Around the room, other tapestries were stacked to the ceiling. "They look like witches in a fairy tale," whispered Annie. "Aye, but they are not witches," said Teddy. "Every cloth they weave is the history of a life." "Wow," said Annie. "Well, good luck," said Teddy. "Kathleen and I will wait out here as you go inside and ask for the wizard's eye." Suddenly a terrible howl pierced the silence. "Yikes," said Annie. "The wolves," said Kathleen. Teddy hurried to the door and threw it open. "Everyone inside," he said, and all 4 of them scrambled into the house of the Norns.